Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be talking briefly about Asteroid Ixion. So this is in relation to my Patreon Q&A from March 2024, and this is a question from a patron who said, I would love to hear your take on Ixion. Other astrologers seem to read him positively as a rebel, a rule breaker, but it's hard for me to see his particular rule breaking as positive. I mean, he was no Prometheus. No, he wasn't a Prometheus. He was a bit of a bad character, a bad boy. Just for reference, we are talking about Asteroid Ixion, which is number 28978. Ixion is a trans-Neptunian object. It is in the Kuiper belt and it's beyond Neptune, hence trans-Neptunian. And so that tells us it's far, far away. It's got a very long orbit. Its orbital period is 251 years, give or take, which is similar to the orbit of Pluto, which is 248 years. So just a few years between them. And so as Ixion is a trans-Neptunian and does have a very long orbit, we know that this is really a transpersonal planet or a transpersonal asteroid. So its effects are going to be more on a collective level than personally. But of course, we can still have a sense of that influence in the chart, especially if it is strongly aspected in the natal chart or when it comes around and forms a transit to the chart. So the name itself, Ixion, is rooted in the meaning for strong native. So we know straight away then this is a strong character. And he has some uncertain ancestry. Some say he is the son of Ares, otherwise known as Mars. So we're in Greek mythology here. So this is Ares, who is the possible father of Ixion. And the main story goes, Ixion was getting married. He was getting married to a woman called Dia. And Ixion promised that he would pay a really handsome bride price for his beautiful bride. But when it came to it, he didn't pay up. And so his father-in-law was not happy about this, so he stole Ixion's horses. So Ixion was really angry that this had happened, even though he had started it. And so he invited his father-in-law to a feast, and he pushed him into hot coals and killed him. And this, according to Greek mythology, was the first murder of kin, which was a terrible, terrible, unimaginable crime. And it was so horrific to all the people that no one would perform the correct rituals to heal Ixion of his guilt, because he was guilty. He felt so guilty. He went absolutely mad with it. He couldn't contain the horror of what he had done. So he is living in this absolute trauma, guilt, and finally Zeus takes pity on him and he says, hey, come over to my house, come up to Olympus. We will have a feast and we'll sort this out. We'll help you. So Ixion went up to Olympus and they had this big feast. But as soon as he saw Hera, he really wanted her. And so all the social rules once again went out of the window and Ixion was properly lusting after Hera, which is not really the done thing because Hera is, of course, Zeus's wife. So Zeus spotted all of this, was really angry about it, and so he created a cloud that was shaped like Hera. And that tricked Ixion. Ixion went along and had lots of fun with this Hera-shaped cloud. And from that union came a son who would eventually mate with horses. And that would eventually give birth to the race of the centaurs. So after Ixion has had his fun with Hera, what he thought was Hera, he is cast out of Olympus. Zeus kind of sends him out with thunderbolts up his behind, and he eventually straps Ixion to a fiery spinning wheel for all of eternity. So, as we can see, Ixion was, as I said before, a bit of a bad boy. He was a wild one. He did not adhere to any of the rules. He committed this terrible, terrible crime. And eventually, even though he was given a second chance, he blew that out of the water, blew it out of the window, and he was punished for all eternity. So when it comes to interpretation, of course, we have to bear all of this in mind, that he is a rule breaker. And as some astrologers say, and I am also one of those astrologers, we can interpret that positively or negatively. Sometimes we need a little bit of Ixion to break through a situation that has got really restrictive. There are people in the world who have stood up and said, these rules are wrong. This legality is wrong. That is an Ixion type event. So when we're looking at interpretation, definitely we can say that the rule breaking can sometimes be positive, and it can also relate to the internal rules that we make for ourselves. That we say to ourselves, I never do this, I can't do this. And we have these limits, which might be, set by Saturn, because he speaks about limitations. So we limit ourselves. And so again, maybe sometimes when our natal Ixion is activated, Ixion looks around and says, this will never do because you're just holding yourself back. This rule is stupid. Let's just get rid of it. So that would be the positives. Generally speaking, we could say that Ixion also can speak of breaking promises. And sometimes we have to break a promise to save ourselves. And other times we break a promise and it can be hurtful. It can be harmful both to the person that's involved and also to ourselves. Ixion can ask us whose rules are we playing by, and sometimes we do, again, need to question the rules. He can speak about second chances because he was given a second chance. So sometimes when Ixion is activated, we too are getting a second chance to put things right. It doesn't mean that we're going to fail because Ixion failed. We just take the concept, the idea of a second chance. We also need to think about in the natal chart whether Ixion's position tells us something of where we need to overcome our passions and maintain some kind of sense of control, because that's the main issue for Ixion. He's controlling, he wants to keep everything for himself, he wants to have everything, he wants Hera, he wants to keep his money instead of giving it to his father-in-law, he wants to keep his horses, he just wants everything for himself. And that could be said is a way for him to try and keep control over his life and maintain his position. And so sometimes the position of our natal Ixion can show where in life we tend to act the same, not going around killing people, but we can act the same in the sense of feeling like I've got to do everything I can to keep the control here. And we get so passionate about it and so fixated on it that actually it can cause us problems. It might cause us a fall from grace in some way. And it can also be where we kind of learn the hard way. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean something terrible befalls us. It's just that we just find it hard to break these limiting patterns, these limiting thoughts, or this terrible desire for control all the time. And sometimes where Ixion is, we have to learn to surrender to the natural cycle of things, which is symbolized by that fiery wheel. The fiery wheel of the year comes to mind thinking about the fire festivals, but certainly the wheel itself speaks of the wheel of time. And sometimes we just have to let time resolve things rather than trying to push and push and push and make something happen. Perhaps the deepest interpretation of Ixion is really connected with this idea of doing something unforgivable and guilt. Because sometimes where Ixion is in our chart, this can correspond to an area of life where we seem to carry guilt. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we've actually done anything wrong. It's just that we feel some kind of sense of guilt or a shame. And maybe that is connected to something that we learned as a child or something that happened to us as a child. We can carry a lot of guilt wherever Ixion is in the chart. And always the resolution for guilt, whether or not we've done something to be guilty about, is compassion, kindness, and of course forgiveness. So you need to kind of look at your Neptune positioning for some idea of how you can process that. Because we can't change the past. We can't undo the past. So even if something happened and you were disappointed with yourself, I wish I hadn't have done that. I hurt this person, I hurt myself. Whatever it is, if we go over it and over it and over it and never forgive ourselves, then yes, we send ourselves mad like Ixion. And it feels like there's no coming back from that. So the way through that is to recognize, okay, I'm actually just punishing myself now. And so the remedy, as I said before, is to practice compassion. You could even look at your position of Jupiter, remembering that Zeus, offered a helping hand to Ixion. He said, I'll forgive you, even if you can't forgive yourself. Even if all the people on the earth can't forgive you, I will forgive you. That's actually quite a lesson. If the gods, if the universe can forgive us, then we should be able to forgive ourselves. So to me, Ixion is much more about these kinds of themes than just being about being rebellious and I'm not going to do what you told me and I'm going to run around just breaking all the rules. I think there are many different layers to the story of Ixion. There's much more than I'm going into here, but I think that will hopefully give you something to think about for your placement of Ixion. So I hope you found this helpful. I will leave the links below for my social media, website, Patreon, Substack, and all of that stuff. And I will be back soon with more asteroid stories and also forecasts for the months ahead on my channel here. Do subscribe and click a like if you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you again soon.